Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, 2024 marks the 60th anniversary of the Ford Mustang. It's been around since 1964. So I thought today, as I'm currently in Los Angeles, standing on Mulholland Drive, I thought I'd review the latest GT. The latest Mustang GT features a 5-litre engine which sends nearly 500 horsepower to the rear wheels. So today should be a good day, shouldn't it? Let's get started. Firstly, let's talk about the styling. Now, it hasn't changed that drastically from the outgoing model, but there are a few subtle tweaks. Now, I love the rear of this car. It is the quintessential muscle car. I love the wide haunches and I love the twin exhausts, but the thing I like the most are these rear lights. I love the fact that they're sort of V-shaped. I love how they've given it sharp edges. It really works well. It almost reminds me of the new Bentley Continental GT. I love the rear spoiler and I love this diffuser down the bottom. From the back, this is a car that's got some real presence. I also really like the rear lights. Watch this. As soon as you lock it and then unlock it, they do a little dance for you. The whole car is just very theatrical. It's all about the drama. Right, follow me then, I'll show you the front. From the front, it's low and wide. It's got such an aggressive front end. I love how the lines and the bulges in the bonnet have given this car real depth. The bonnet even has these angry nostrils. It just looks like it's up for a brawl. Something I like in particular are the headlamps. I think they look really menacing. And once again, they put on a little light show for you. Like I said, it's all about the theatre. You can buy the Mustang with a 5-litre V8, but it's still available with the 2.3-litre EcoBoost engine. Let me show you under the bonnet then. This really is where the heart of this car lies. Now what you're looking at is a 5-litre, 486 horsepower, naturally aspirated V8, and it's a gem. I mean, take a look at the air intakes. Here is a car that just wants to be driven. The Mustang's available as two body types, either a hardtop coupe or a convertible like this. Now personally, as much as I love a convertible, I don't really like convertible muscle cars. I think they work better as a hardtop coupe. And also, driving this around the streets of LA, with the fabric top you hear an awful lot of road noise. But I think with the hardtop, it'd be a much more refined car. I'll tell you what then, would you like to hear what this car sounds like? I think you'll agree then that that sounds awesome. I just think it's one of those noises from which I don't think you'd ever tire. You'd definitely hear this car coming long before you saw it. Before we take it for a drive then, let's talk interior. So, boot space, so let's have a look. So you've got to press and hold the key twice. There we go. No power lift tailgate here, guys. It's a reasonable size at least. I think you'd get a couple of decent sized suitcases in there, so it would make an ideal rental car. One downside though is the actual opening. The actual aperture is quite restricted. And another thing, it all feels a little bit cheap. I mean, take a look at the boot floor, for example. It's made from this cheap polycarbonate stuff, and then they've stuck on this cheap, thin carpet, which is peeling already. It's all a bit poor. Let me show you the inside then. Now, inside the Mustang is where it all starts to fall apart, really. It all looks quite nice, it's nice and theatrical, but everything you touch and feel feels of the cheapest, nastiest quality. In fact, the first thing that hits you about this car when you open the door is the smell. Straight away, you're just overwhelmed by the smell of cheap plastics. Now, the layout of everything's quite good. Everything's within easy reach. The seats are comfortable. The steering wheel feels nice. You get two cup holders, a nice centre armrest. From an ergonomic point of view, I can't really complain, but everything you touch and feel just feels very cheap and flimsy. Down here, you get a charging mat for your phone, but look at this. It's just very poor, isn't it? I don't like the steering wheel buttons either. They're not contoured, they're just completely flat. And that means, of course, when you're on the move, they're just not very easy to operate. The plastic they've used on the centre of the steering wheel is sharp around the edges. I mean, it's actually sharp. It's all very rough. It just feels like it's been cobbled together on the tightest of budgets. To start the Mustang GT, you press your foot on the brake and then you press this start button down here. But again, I think that's quite a poor design. It isn't illuminated like a Jaguar, and the colour of it's a very dark red, which makes the text difficult to read. You get some buttons down here for the essentials, so you've got your hazard warning light switch and your windscreen demist. But look at this when you try and press anything. The whole panel moves. I just think it's really poor. It just shows a complete lack of quality. In addition to that, the volume knob is very stiff and almost difficult to use. You get a USB point and a USB-C point, and you also get a 12-volt charger. But again, even the cover on the 12-volt charger feels as though it's going to fall off any minute. In terms of technology, everything's operated from this touchscreen here, which is a little bit fiddly and difficult to use. So things like the climate control, the heated and ventilated seats, the heated steering wheel, the sat-nav, the radio, they're all controlled from this touchscreen. And although it looks nice, it isn't the most user-friendly system I've ever used. But perhaps the most shocking thing about the whole car, which is the biggest evidence of money saving and corner cutting, is the roof. Now watch how you operate it. Let's turn the engine on. There we go. Right, there's a button here to raise or lower the roof, which is fine, there's nothing unusual about that. But before that will work, you've got to do this. Are you ready for this? Bear in mind this is a brand new car. It's a 2024 car. It isn't the car from the 90s, it's a 2024 Mustang. You've got to pull this lever and then twist it. I haven't seen that on a car for about 15 years. When I saw that, I honestly couldn't believe my eyes. How poor is that? On the bright side though, the actual roof operation is quite quick. That only takes about, well, less than 10 seconds. There we go. But yeah, having to twist a noisy, clumsy handle that makes a racket and then fold back up is just something you'd expect from the early 2000s, not 2024. Something else to mention actually, if you're driving along and you decide you're suddenly bored of listening to the V8 engine, I don't know why you would be, but you know, hypothetically, if that were the case, the Bang & Olufsen sound system is superb. In terms of interior space, then there is enough. You can adjust the seat down nice and low. However, the upright part of the seat is manual. That wasn't me, by the way, that was the chair. It's all just very poor and very cheaply finished. It's actually quite disappointing, to be honest, because I was very excited to get behind the wheel of these, because since I've been in LA, I've seen dozens of these cars. This car is technically a four-seater, so it's a 2+2, but let me show you the rear space. Now, to get in the back, you fold the seat back like that. Okay, I'm technically sat back here, but it's not particularly comfortable. My head's rubbing on the roof, my knees are rubbing on the seat in front. It isn't particularly spacious. Anyway, enough moaning for now. The sun's just come out, and we're currently sitting on Mulholland Drive with a 5-litre Mustang. Should we take it for a spin? Well, we're in the 5-litre Mustang GT, and the first thing I can tell you is, with the roof down and the sun out on Mulholland Drive, you immediately forget about how naff the interior is. Honestly, with the sound of that engine and some wind in your hair, I couldn't care less that the fit and finish of everything's a bit poor. It doesn't really matter. The thing you've got to remember is, in the US at least, these are quite cheap cars. Brand new, they're around $57,000. In the UK, they're a bit more expensive, sadly. They're around £60,000. And I don't think it's worth £60,000 sterling, but at $57,000, then it starts to be quite an appealing proposition. Before we continue with my Mustang review, I'm just going to say a quick thank you to today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Car Vertical. Now, before you hand over any cash for a used car or motorbike, it's really important that you do a thorough vehicle history check, and I always use Car Vertical. It's really easy to use. All you do is go to carvertical.com and type in the reg or the VIN. And it isn't just a UK thing either, it works in 35 different countries. It'll tell you whether it's ever been stolen, written off, had a mileage rollback, or has outstanding finance on it. In addition to that, it shows you the MOT history, the ownership changes. Sometimes if it has been involved in an accident, it even shows you the photographs of the recorded damage. Something else Car Vertical have recently introduced is a way of booking an inspection on the car you're thinking about buying. It's a really useful feature. There are an awful lot of dodgy cars out there, so it's really important that you do a thorough check. And it's even more important with a car like a Mustang, because the chances are it might have seen the wrong side of the hedge. Long-term viewers of the channel will know that I always run a Car Vertical check before I buy a car. It can just save you a potential headache. The report itself doesn't take long to generate, and it isn't that expensive either. And it's cheaper still if you use my promo code HIGHPEAK. That's HIGHPEAK, all one word, HIGHPEAK, and you'll save yourself 20% off each and every check that you do. This isn't just a one-time promo code, you can use it as many times as you like. So thanks Car Vertical for sponsoring today's video. Like I said, don't forget to use my promo code HIGHPEAK for 20% off each and every check that you do. Or alternatively, click the link below in the video description. Right, back to the Mustang. The last time I drove a Mustang here in LA, it was in 1998, and it was honestly one of the worst things I've ever driven. The back end just felt loose. I think that's down to its live rear axle. It was just one of the worst things I've ever driven. Because of that, I didn't set the bar with this Mustang awfully high, but it is nothing like that old Mustang. When you're driving this, it doesn't feel like an American car at all. It does feel quite European. The steering feels quite tight. It's very sure-footed, it's very agile, precise, there's plenty of grip, and those brakes are very good. One thing I will say though is when I read the stats on this car, I thought it was going to be a handful. Bear in mind now, we've got 484 brake horsepower, it's rear wheel drive, and it's got a 0 to 60 time of around 4.5 seconds, so I thought this was going to feel blisteringly quick. It doesn't really. It's quick enough, I suppose, but it never feels dangerous. It never feels as though it's trying to kill you. I suppose that's a good thing, obviously, but I was expecting it to be a bit more exhilarating, and it isn't. When you floor it from a standstill, it's not the quickest car in the world. It eventually picks up its feet, but it just doesn't have the performance from takeoff I was expecting. Watch this then. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's quick enough, but it's just not as quick as you'd expect a car with those stats. It just isn't. In terms of MPG, I was thinking, well, it isn't a huge car, this. I know it's got a big engine, but it isn't that big. It can't weigh that much. It'll most likely do 18 or 19 miles per gallon, won't it? That's what I was thinking. But how wrong was I? I've been averaging this morning. You ready for this? 13 MPG. I suppose that's probably because of the way I've been driving it. The steering's what surprised me most about this car. It's really good fun. It only takes the smallest of inputs. It's great fun, this. The only downside to driving a convertible Mustang here in Los Angeles is that you just feel like such a tourist. It's like the stereotypical tourist thing to do, isn't it? Oh, I'm going to LA, I'm going to rent a Mustang convertible. In case you're wondering, the gearbox is a 6-speed auto, and I quite like it. It's a lazy old gearbox, but I quite like that. It suits this car perfectly. Just quickly going back to the performance on this car, this is almost one of those cars where you can just keep your right foot firmly on the accelerator all the time, and you never really come unstuck. I'm not really sure who the intended person is for this car. I think if I were in the UK, I wouldn't hand over £60,000 for one. There are just better options out there for the money. But if I lived here, for example, then $57,000, what's that, about 42 grand in pounds? All of a sudden it starts to look like quite good value, doesn't it? I mean, this is nowhere near as precise as something European. This isn't an M4. But in all honesty, that would suit somebody like me. You know, I just want something that sounds all right, that goes relatively quickly. And this Mustang GT certainly does that. Even though the interior quality is quite poor, it does come with some nice features. So for example, on this very warm day, I've got a nice ventilated seat, keeping my backside nice and cool. You get a reverse camera, you get cruise control, you get a decent sound system. I suppose really this is like anything in life. Your opinion of this car will greatly depend on what you're used to and how high your expectations are. If you're coming out of something premium and German, you'll probably hate this. You probably couldn't tolerate the poor fit and finish of everything. But if you're not, then you probably quite like it. Something else to point out actually, it rides quite nicely. You don't feel all the bumps as I was expecting. It's alright. I had this image in my mind that this would be a really soft, wallowy ride, but it isn't. I think they've got the balance just right, really. It's not too firm, but it's not too soft. I also like the fact that you get a traditional gear lever. For the last few days I've been living with a Chevrolet Tahoe and it's got these weird buttons on the dash. But happily the Mustang doesn't. You've got a good old-fashioned gear lever. It is a nice thing to cruise around in this, really. When I got in this car this morning I was quite disappointed with it. I was disappointed at how bad the interior was. This car could have really done with bigger door mirrors. I just don't think these work particularly well. It's been a while since I've done one of these reviews, one of these should you buy videos. So I suppose I should probably try and round up my thoughts, shouldn't I? Should you buy a Mustang GT? Not for £60,000, no. If you happen to live somewhere else where they're much cheaper, then yes. There we go. That was easy, wasn't it? Right, well I think that's about it then. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. I'll leave the links below. And yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.